We've spent some time talking about segments and different problems with segments, and now we're going to spend some time talking about angles. So first we need to start with the definition of an angle, and this is on your full sheet that you got in class today. The definition of an angle is a figure consisting of two non-collinear rays with a common endpoint. So on the left part of your paper, you'll find a box that has these, and what we're going to do is learn how to label angles, which is super important. So we call the vertex of the angle kind of the pointy part where both your rays are meeting. So the vertex of this angle that is drawn would be either point B, or you can just call it B. The sides are two rays, and remember with rays you have to start the notation with endpoint. So the endpoint in both of them is going to be B, and then one goes towards A. Remember, you need your arrow above it, and then the other one goes towards C. There are a lot of ways that we can name this angle. We can call this angle 1, since you see we have a 1 on the interior of the angle. We can call it just angle B, or we can name it with 3 letters. And this is one that can confuse students sometimes. What you want to do is trace, making sure your vertex ends up in the middle. So I'm going to start with A, B, C. So I could call it A, B, C, or I could go the reverse direction and do C, B, A. The important thing is that the vertex has to be in the middle. And we're going to talk about how to classify these. And what I mean by classify is it acute, obtuse, straight, or a right angle? So you probably know that vocabulary already. But this would be an acute angle. We'll do definitions in just a second. Excuse me. So when we talk about something being on the interior, you're looking for a point. This is in the top right. You're looking for a point kind of on the inside of an angle. So I see that U is in the interior of, I see this angle right here. Could I do that bigger angle? Sure. But I'm going to do that, and let's get some practice of writing that angle using 3 letters versus just using angle 3. So I'm going to start up here, W, X, Z. W, X, Z. I do the little cross with Z, otherwise it looks like a 2 for me. Which conveniently, we just named angle 3, so we're already done with part 2. W, X, Z. And then if we want to name 4, I'm going to start with Y. Y, X, Z. But if it makes your heart happy, you can go the other way. You can go Z, X, Y. If that just makes you happy. But notice they both have the vertex X in the middle. So let's review this vocabulary that you probably know. So an acute angle means that the measure is what? Less than 90 degrees. So for example, if I had this angle and it was 62 degrees. Of course not drawn to scale because I never did that. If it's obtuse, that means that the measure is greater than, sorry, not 180, greater than 90 degrees. So say my angle was 112. Straight angle means that the measure is exactly 180, and I call that because it makes a straight line. And then a right angle means that the measure is 90 degrees. And remember that we will use the kind of little box right there to denote that it's a right angle, or 90 degrees. So what you need to do next is on the back of that page, there are some problems, and I want you to try those. We'll correct them if you make any mistakes, but I want you to try those and include that in your picture of your notes. Once you're ready with that, then we're going to go to the next foldable that says Angle Addition Postulate and Angle Bisector. So just pause until you get done with that. So these are really similar to the segment addition postulate and the segment bisector. Same idea, we're just talking about angles. So if K is on the interior of HIJ, and you'll notice that K is in the middle, then HIK, we'll just call that angle 1, plus KIJ, we'll call that angle 2, is equal to the measure of HIJ, the whole thing, and we'll call that 3. So there's two ways that we can write that. Angle 1 plus angle 2 equals angle 3, and then also how they gave it to me originally. So, and this M, if we haven't talked about it yet, M means the measure, so the measure of angle HIK plus the measure of angle KIJ equals the measure of HIJ. Or you can think of it as the small angle plus the small angle equals the big angle. It's literally just telling us we can add these things together. So let's look at an example. If the measure of AOC is 70, so this whole thing, I just like to keep labeling as I'm going through the problem. The whole thing is 70 degrees. And the measure of AOB, so I'm going to put what comes after this there, is 1/2 2x plus 20. I'm going to do what we did in the last video with segments and go ahead and simplify those fractions before I put it in my problem. So half of 2x, half of 2 is just 1, plus half of 20 would be 10, so I'm going to put x plus 10. And then the measure of BOC is x. Find x, BOC, and AOB. So basically find all the things. So now what we're going to do is, this means that x plus 10 plus x equals the total, which was 70. So I can combine like terms. X plus x is 2x. So 2x plus 10 equals 70. And a two-step equation, minus 10 from both sides. 70 minus 10 is 60. And divide by 2. So that gives me my first answer they're looking for, which is that x is 30. Then it wants BOC. Let me not do that in black. BOC. Well, that's easy. That's just what x was, which is 30. And then going back to AOB, which was x plus 10. So 30 plus 10. And of course, if you can do that in your head, absolutely, that sounds great. So 30, 30, and 40. Now, when we bisected a segment, that meant we split it into two equal parts. So when I bisect an angle, it means that I split the angle into two congruent angles. And I just realized that I have the wrong picture here. So if you look at the picture that you have and read that definition, sorry about that, it says a ray that divides an angle into two congruent angles. And your picture looks more like WX Z, and Y. Sorry about that. So when I'm doing an angle bisector, that means that in this case, measure of angle, WXZ is equal to the measure of angle ZXY. Or if I just add some numbers, angle 1 is going to be the same as angle 2. Measure of angle 1 equals the measure of angle 2. And the way we notate when things are congruent or the same, reminder, is a little hash mark like that. So that means those two angles are the same. So let's look at the problem. It says that FG bisects EFH. So that means I'm going to go ahead and mark that these two angles are congruent. If, notice I love using color for these to keep track of stuff. GFH is 1/2 times 10x minus 20. Once again, let's simplify before we put in. So half of 10x is 5x. Half of negative 20 is negative 10. So GFH is 5x minus 10. And EFG is 3x plus 25. Find all of those things. So what I need to use in this case, I'm not going to add them together. I'm actually going to set them equal because since it was an angle bisector, that means those two angles it's talking about, 3x plus 25 is equal to 5x minus 10. Now we have an equation with variables on both sides, so you want to move the variables first. I'm going to move this 3x by subtracting. 25 equals 2x minus 10. And then we're going to add 10, which gives me 35 equals 2x. Divide by 2, and we do get a decimal, so on this one I'm okay if we're using a calculator when we're plugging this in. If it was on a test or something and you didn't have a calculator, it would be nicer numbers. So we got x. Now I need to find all these other things. So I'm going to try to write kind of tiny, and once again, for this part you would use a calculator. So GFH is the one that's 5x minus 10. So that would be 5 times 17.5 minus 10, which is going to give you 77.5 degrees. Now, we know that EFG should be the same thing because they're congruent angles. So I'm going to save myself some work and just put 77.5 degrees. EFH is the whole thing, so I can just do 77.5 plus 77.5, or a shorter way, 77.5 times 2. Either way, more than one way to skin a cat. 155 degrees. And then IFE, we have to use something we haven't really talked about yet, which is something called a supplementary angle. So I'm just going to sketch this. Actually, it's obtuse, so let's make it look obtuse. If this is 155, and IFE is what we want here, well, those were making a straight angle. I'm just going to call this, we'll call it Y. Since it's a straight angle, I know that Y plus 155 has to equal 180, so I can solve for Y by subtracting from 180, which would give me 25 degrees. Make sure you take make sure you take some pictures and upload them to the Google Doc.